This is a real dinosaur footprint, 112 million years old. And further up this same road, this is also a dinosaur. And so is this. Utah's Highway 191 doesn't know if it wants to be a museum or a punchline. And after riding all 500 miles of it, I'm still not sure it has to choose. But that's later. This road starts, for me, at a bend in the San Juan River, a campground called Sand Island, where the canyon walls are covered in 6,000 years of rock art, and the morning starts with coffee instead of a highway sign. From here, Highway 191 runs north, through pioneer forts, ghost mines, uranium fortunes, and a cemetery with a very strange story of its own, before it ever gets anywhere near a dinosaur. Let's start at the beginning. Welcome back to the Motorcycle Travel Channel. I'm Sterling. I'm going to take you up Highway 191 as we make our way all the way up to Alaska. Morning at Sand Island comes with the sound of the San Juan River, doing what it's done for millions of years, moving steadily past camp, the way a river gets when it's had that much practice. Coffee first. A small stove, quiet minutes, watching the light come up over red rock instead of pine for a change, which is as good a sign as any that Arizona's behind me and Utah has properly begun. Before packing up, it's worth the short walk over to the cliff face above the campground, because Sand Island is home to one of the more remarkable petroglyph panels in the Southwest. 100 yards of sandstone covered in images left behind by several different groups, with some marks possibly dating back to the earliest Clovis hunters in North America. For roughly 6,000 years, people have been passing through this exact spot and leaving a record of themselves on these walls. Standing in front of it with a cup of coffee still warm in your hand, it's not an easy thing to fully take in. 6 millennia of travelers, all pausing at this same bend in the river, all deciding it was worth leaving something behind. The San Juan River itself deserves a little credit here too, because it's not just scenery, it's the reason any of this exists at all. It's a major tributary of the Colorado, carving its way west through some of the most remote canyon country left in the United States. And Sand Island serves as the main put-in for a 100-plus mile stretch of the river, running through canyons rich in scenery, geology, archaeology, and wildlife. For as long as people have lived in this part of the world, the river has been the thing that made living here possible. Water in a landscape that offers precious little of it, and a natural corridor that's drawn travelers, traders, and artists to its banks for thousands of years running. I'm just the latest one to stop here a while and look up at the walls before moving on. And moving on this morning means turning north onto Highway 191, the Utah chapter of this ride starting exactly where it should, at a river that's been welcoming travelers since long before there was a road, a bike, or a highway number to speak of. Bluff is a small town that punches well above its size when it comes to history, and the place to feel that is Bluff Fort, a rebuilt pioneer settlement sitting right along Highway 191, and one of the more quietly moving stops I made this whole trip. The story goes back to the winter of 1879, when roughly 250 Mormon settlers set out from Escalante with a mandate to found a mission on the San Juan River, a journey of not quite 200 miles that any reasonable person would have expected to take a few weeks. It took closer to 6 months, mostly because the terrain simply refused to cooperate. At one point, the expedition had to blast and chisel a route through solid rock, and then lower their entire wagon train, animals and all, down a 1,300-foot rock face. When they finally reached the San Juan in April of 1880, they simply stopped, looked at the flat ground in front of them, and decided that was close enough. Bluff was born out of sheer exhaustion, in the best possible sense of the word. Of the roughly 40 original cabins that once stood in this fort, only one survives, and everything else here has been faithfully reconstructed by a local foundation determined to get the details right, down to furnishings donated by the actual descendant families. Each cabin represents a specific household from that original company, names and all, which explains something you may have noticed. The small signs scattered through the fort inviting visitors to scan a code and check their own family tree against the settlers. That's not a random gimmick. It's a very Mormon instinct, genealogy being something close to a sacred practice in that tradition. And it turns out a fair number of visitors walk through this fort and discover their distant kin to the very families whose cabins they're standing in. After that much history, breakfast felt earned, and Bluff obliges with the Twin Rocks Cafe, a menu leaning hard into Navajo fry bread and local ingredients that sends you back out to the bike a little heavier and a lot more satisfied than you were an hour before. Twin Rocks standing watch overhead the whole time, the way they have been, presumably, since long before anyone thought to open a restaurant beneath them. Leaving Bluff, the Red Rock puts on one more show before letting go. Canyon walls and sandstone in that deep rust color, giving way gradually to something flatter and more open. The kind of landscape change you feel in your chest before you quite register it with your eyes. I pulled over for a minute just to take it in, that particular sensation of the world suddenly having more room in it than it did 5 minutes ago. Blanding comes next, and just past it, Recapture Reservoir catches the light in a shade of blue you don't expect out here, tucked into red rock like somebody spilled a piece of sky into the canyon by mistake. A quick stop downtown at the San Juan County Courthouse, built back in 1927, still doing its original job in a county that's covered nearly 8,000 square miles and has never had much of a hurry about it. And by now the traffic on 191 is noticeably picked up. More people have heard the same thing I have, that this stretch of Utah is worth the drive. The land keeps handing out landmarks from here. The Latigo wind farm spinning along the foothills outside of Monticello. Church Rock, a lone sandstone column standing in an open meadow, looking enough like a chapel steeple that nobody's ever bothered arguing about the name. And finally Wilson Arch, 90-some feet across and hard to miss right off the highway, carved out by nothing more patient or more thorough than wind, ice, and time. A short stretch of road, but a busy one. Utah, it turns out, doesn't believe in wasting scenery. A few miles south of Moab, Highway 191 delivers you to one of the strangest homes in America. A house not built on a rock, but carved directly into one. Hole in the rock is exactly what the name promises, and then some. A 5,000 square foot home hollowed out of a sandstone cliff by a man named Albert Christensen, who started digging in 1940 with nothing more than raw persistence and a lot of patience. He and his wife Gladys moved in 1952, ran a small diner out of the front room for a while, and when Albert passed away in 1957, with the place still not entirely finished, Gladys kept right on going, adding a gift shop and giving tours herself until she died in the 1970s. The two of them are buried together in a small alcove just off the property, which feels about right, honestly, for two people who spent their whole lives making a home out of a rock nobody else thought to live in. I didn't have time for the tour of the house itself this trip, but the outdoor collection alone is worth the stop. A sprawling, unfiltered assortment of Americana that seems to have accumulated here the way objects do around any roadside attraction that's been open long enough. There's an old jail, weathered miners' shacks, a whole yard of vintage automobiles and hand-painted signs, and, the one that stole the show for me, a genuine Jeep so thoroughly plastered in old license plates that you can barely find the paint underneath. It's kitschy, unapologetically so, and also somehow completely earnest, the way only a place built by one stubborn rock-carving dreamer really can be. Moab announces itself the way tourist towns do. More traffic, more gear shops, more people in matching outdoor apparel than you'll find anywhere else in southeastern Utah. And I'll admit it's not really my kind of stop. Not because there's anything wrong with it, it's just a town built for lingering, and lingering isn't really what this trip is about. Still, I rode up to the Sunset Grill for the view, even though it wasn't open. And the drive up alone is a small experience in itself. A long, steep switchback climbing straight up on the cliff face. The kind of driveway that makes you wonder less about the restaurant waiting at the top and more about whoever decided a private home needed its own mountain road to reach it. And it turns out that's exactly what it was. The building up there was once the private mansion of a man named Charlie Steen, a broke, nearly out-of-money geologist who in 1952 found one of the richest uranium deposits in American history. He named the discovery Mi Vida, My Life. It turned him almost overnight from a man living in a trailer to a millionaire who flew a private plane, drove a new Lincoln every year, and built himself a $250,000 hilltop mansion, complete with the largest swimming pool in the state. That mansion is the restaurant you're looking at now, and standing out on the patio, it's easy to see why he picked that spot. The whole valley spreads out below, against the red rock, with a view built for exactly one thing, watching the sun go down over it. I noticed a bottle of champagne on the menu going for $350, which felt in its own way like a fitting tribute to a man who once turned a Geiger counter into that kind of fortune. On the way out of town, I crossed the Colorado River, and it's worth pausing on that, because everything downstream of this bridge, the canyons, the dams, 7 states worth of water rights and arguments, all of it starts with the river that up here still looks almost modest. It's easy to ride across a bridge like that without registering what's underneath you, and this one's worth registering. From there it was on to Arches, Moab behind me, its crowd and its $300 champagne left to somebody else's itinerary, and the quiet, strange orange landscape of the park still ahead. I'll be honest with you here, because I think honesty is worth more than most travel content bothers giving you. National parks and solo motorcycle touring don't always get along, and Arches was a good example of why. It's not the park's fault. Arches is what it advertises, 76,000 acres of red rock and more than 2,000 sandstone arches. The road running 18 miles from the entrance out to Devil's Garden at the far end, and every mile of it genuinely beautiful. But a park built around this many people, with this much traffic, and a fee station at the front door, is a different kind of riding than anything else on the rest of this trip. On a motorcycle, you feel the crowding more directly than you would in a car. Traffic backed up at pullouts, heat radiating up off the asphalt. And there's a more practical problem underneath all of that. Most of what makes Arches worth visiting requires getting off the road and walking, and a solo rider can't exactly leave a loaded motorcycle and every piece of gear he owns sitting unattended in a parking lot. So you end up doing the park differently than most visitors, through the windshield of a helmet, past trailheads you'd genuinely like to hike but can't. I rode the road anyway, all the way out to Devil's Garden and back, and it was hot, and it was beautiful, and if I'm being fully honest, it may not have earned its place on the itinerary the way some of the smaller, stranger, and less expensive stops along this road have. And that's not a knock on Arches, it's a genuine, useful note for another rider planning a trip like this one. If you're traveling solo, loaded down, and not planning to camp or hike, it's worth going in with your eyes open about what you'll actually get out of it and deciding for yourself whether the fee, the crowds, and the heat are worth a ride through versus a real visit on foot. Sometimes the honest answer is that a place is worth seeing at least once, briefly, and that's exactly what I did. Just outside Moab sits a place that has no business being as much fun as it is. A half-a-mile trail winding through the desert, populated by more than 100 life-size dinosaur replicas, each one built with the kind of careful, almost obsessive detail that makes you forget for a minute at a time that you're looking at fiberglass and not flesh. A Brachiosaurus stands taller than the cottonwoods. A Tyrannosaurus looms over the path at a scale that photographs simply don't do justice to. You have to stand next to the thing yourself to understand what 40 feet long actually means in practice. And that honestly was the real thrill of it for me, Not the novelty, but the scale. Walking that trail, dwarfed by something that size, it's hard not to let your imagination wander a little further than the gift shop probably intends. What would it have actually been like sharing a landscape with animals built on this scale, not as a curiosity, but as a fact of daily life, the way we think about grizzly bears or moose today, except roughly the size of a school bus? It's a strange kind of time travel, standing in the middle of the desert next to a 100-ton animal that's been extinct for tens of millions of years, and for a few minutes actually feeling the scale of it, rather than just reading about it. A little further up the road is a very different kind of dinosaur stop. No replicas this time, nothing built or painted or posed. It's one of the most scientifically significant sites of its kind in the country, discovered only in 2009, hiding in plain sight along a dirt road most people had driven past for decades. This whole stretch of desert, dry and cracked as it looks today, was lakeshore once. Soft mud recording every animal that happened to walk across it on an ordinary Cretaceous afternoon. And then, against every reasonable expectation, that mud held on for over 100 million years, waiting for somebody to notice. Just a short boardwalk over a stretch of ancient mudstone, and in that mudstone, real tracks left by real animals more than 112 million years ago. Paleontologists have counted more than 200 individual footprints here, representing at least 10 different species. Meat eaters, long-necked plant eaters, armored ankylosaurs, even ancient crocodiles that once hauled themselves out of a long-vanished lake to sun on this exact spot. It's a strange kind of contrast coming here right after Moab giants, from a place built entirely on imagination and craftsmanship to a place that requires none at all, because what you're looking at is simply undeniably true. The replicas down the road show you what a dinosaur might have looked like. This place shows you that one actually walked here. A different kind of thrill entirely, and I'd argue even a better one. The ride into Green River crosses some of the most barren country on the whole trip. Flat, sun-bleached, empty in a way that makes you grateful when the land finally does something, which it does right at the edge of town, dropping you onto the bridge over the Green River itself. It's worth a moment of respect crossing that bridge, because this river carries more history than its quiet, muddy green color lets on. It was down this exact stretch of water that John Wesley Powell launched his famous 1869 expedition, one-armed and half-mapped, into country nobody had yet run by boat and lived to describe. Green River State Park turned out to be a genuinely pleasant surprise after a long, hot day. A shaded campground tucked in among the cottonwoods, right along the riverbank, sharing the grounds with a 9-hole golf course that runs along the water. It's an odd but agreeable combination, tents pitched a few hundred yards from somebody's back nine, and after the heat of the ride, in the shade and the sound of the river, it made it one of the better campsites of the trip. A couple of other motorcyclists who also ride Ducatis came over to say hello and show me pictures of their bikes. So you guys are what they call Ducatistas.
We are.
Oh yeah, we had the last one too.
100%. We've done a lot of cross America trips with camping and like we usually do like a 10-day, 3,000-mile loop somewhere. I've had three Multistradas. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah.
Right on,
Ducati's going to love this.
It's a pleasure, and we saw you and we had to say hi because we are spirit animals,
13 years
right?
ago
Yeah.
we were here.
Yeah, 13 years ago exactly at this camp spot this month. We were here on our ducks.
Awesome.
No, that's
this
really funny.
This is beautiful. Oh, I love you. Okay. Oh yeah,
I
this is
feel
me on my
forward
old
from
one,
Ducati.
in my high heels
never
going to work
had
in Denver.
Oh,
It was fun. So nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
All right.
Thank you both. Thanks for
you.
coming by and
Sorry
saying
we,
hi. Morning brought breakfast at the Tamarisk, a riverside restaurant that's become something of an institution for travelers coming through. Good food, and a view of the green sliding past the window the whole time you eat, unhurried, same as it's been doing since long before Powell ever put a boat on it. On the way out of town, I spotted a couple of old vehicles parked outside a local business, the kind of quiet roadside relics that don't come with much explanation. I always find myself slowing down for machines like that. There's something about an old emergency vehicle, decommissioned and put out to pasture, that tells you a little bit about a town's whole history without a single word of signage. Every one of these trucks answered a call once, and somewhere in Green River, there are people who remember exactly which ones. The road into East Carbon runs through some of the emptiest country on the whole trip, flat and hard and endless, with just enough traffic on the rails running alongside to remind you that this land was once busy in ways it plainly isn't anymore. Freight trains pass in the distance now and then, long and unhurried, carrying whatever it is trains carry through country like this these days. A quiet echo of the reason this whole stretch of desert got settled in the first place. That reason sits at the end of the road, an old depot, abandoned now, once the railroad from the Columbia coal mine, built back in the 1920s by the Carbon County Railway to haul coal out of these hills. The building's mostly given itself back to the desert, a sagging roofline, broken windows, the particular kind of quiet that settles into a place once its whole purpose for existing has moved on. I poked around inside for a few minutes, careful where I stepped, before heading toward the real reason for the stop. And the walk out back does something clever without meaning to. You start noticing loose bricks scattered in the dirt well before you can see the source of the bricks. More and more of them the closer you get, like the ground itself is dropping hints about what's coming. And what's coming is a long row of brick beehive ovens, built to bake raw coal down into coke, a cleaner, more concentrated fuel, lighter to ship and hotter to burn, which is exactly why an operation out here went to the trouble of building dozens of these things in the middle of nowhere. The coke made in ovens like these got shipped clear out to a steel mill in California, which is a strange thing to consider, standing in the desert of Utah, that this exact patch of ground once helped fuel an industry 2 states away. Near the ovens sits an old wooden structure, weathered gray, that has the unmistakable shape of a loading chute. The kind of thing built for one purpose, moving coal or coke from one place to another as efficiently as 1920s engineering allowed. And nearby a pile of rusted metal cans, the last physical trace of an operation that ran for decades before finally shutting down in the late 1950s, and the mine closed for good not long after that. The 2 mining towns that grew up around all this eventually merged, and merged again, into what's now called East Carbon, a name that, walking around out here, feels less like branding and more like an epitaph. Rejoining the main artery of 191, we follow the old railroad tracks into the wonderfully preserved town of Helper. Helper earned its unique name because it was the exact spot where extra coal-fired steam locomotives, called helper engines, had to be coupled to the backs of heavy freight trains to push them up the brutally steep grade of Price Canyon. Helper might just be my favorite town in Utah, and I think I know why. Walking Main Street here felt a lot like walking home in Bisbee, Arizona, where I live. Brick buildings that mean it, old theaters and bars that never got torn down just because something newer came along, and neon signs still hanging on from an era that didn't know it was being nostalgic. And tucked away, among all of it, a handful of genuinely good art galleries that somehow don't feel like they're trying too hard. It's the exact blend that I go for on a trip like this. Real history, still standing, with just enough gentle modern life layered on top to keep it breathing instead of embalmed. You know you've arrived the second you see Big John, an 18-foot fiberglass coal miner, painted the same black as the coal that built this town. He went up in 1964, and if the name sounds familiar, it's because the town borrowed it from Big Bad John, a country hit from a few years earlier about a giant of a miner who dies saving his crew in a collapse. It's a strange, small tribute, but it fits in a place that's never been shy about wearing its mining history right out in the open. And Helper earned that history quite honestly. It started in 1881 as a rail town, and it grew fast once the coal mines opened around it. Fast enough and diverse enough that old-timers still call it the Ellis Island of Utah, on account of the immigrants who came here by the thousands to work in the mines and the rails. At its peak, this small desert town held something like 20,000 people. Today it's closer to 2,000, which tells you plenty about the boom and bust math of coal towns all on its own. The Western Mining and Railroad Museum is where all of that history gets laid out properly. An old caboose and rail cars parked outside, doing the job of a welcome sign. And inside, room after room of it. There's a genuinely striking collection of photographs by Dorothea Lange, the Depression-era photographer whose images practically defined how America pictured hardship in the 1930s, alongside an old camera collection and dozens of historic railroad photographs documenting the trains that built this town. One photograph stopped me cold. A child, pickaxe in hand, staring back at the camera with an expression that tells you plainly this wasn't play. A large model train diorama runs through another room, meticulously and clearly loved by whoever built it. And a vintage cigarette machine sits quietly in a corner, a small strange artifact of an era when you could buy Marlboros the same way you'd buy a candy bar. But the room that stuck with me the most held the mining safety equipment, old lamps, respirators, rescue gear, all of it a reminder that this wasn't just a company town, it was dangerous work, done underground by men who didn't always come back up. It's a quiet, sobering note in an otherwise colorful museum, and it's the kind of thing that stays with you a little longer down the road, which, as it turns out, was exactly where I was headed next. The Castlegate Cemetery sits quiet off the road, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. A plain hillside burial ground, disturbed only now and then by the sound of a truck downshifting on the highway nearby. I'd heard there was a story here before I arrived, but I didn't know the shape of it yet, and walking among the headstones is where that shape started to come into focus. What you notice first are the crosses, plain, white, unadorned, row after row of them. And what you notice second, once you start actually reading them, is the date. The same date, over and over again, as if something happened here all at once and never happened again. On the morning of March 8, 1924, a fire boss working deep inside the Castlegate No. 2 mine went to check on a pocket of methane gas near the roof of the shaft. His lamp went out. He struck a match to relight it. The match ignited the gas. The gas ignited a cloud of coal dust that hadn't been properly watered down from the shift before, and the mine erupted in a chain of explosions so violent the blast threw mining cars and equipment nearly a mile from the entrance. Every single man working underground that morning died, all 171 of them. A rescuer searching for survivors in the aftermath breathed in carbon monoxide and became the 172nd. So that's the answer to the question the crosses ask without saying a word. This isn't a cemetery that filled up slowly, the way most cemeteries do, one loss at a time over the span of a town's whole life. This is a cemetery that filled up in a single morning. 172 men buried under 172 crosses, all carrying the same date, because for the town of Castlegate, that date was the only one that ever really mattered again. Oh, this is nice. It's cooling off. We're at 8,000 feet. What a beautiful ride in this canyon up to this high elevation. Really nice, except there's a lot of big trucks on this road. Leaving Castlegate, the road climbs into canyon country again. And this stretch comes with some genuine construction, bracing the road for a lot more heavy truck traffic than it was ever built to carry. And this is traffic that traces back to the oil and gas development further north in the basin that this road leads into. Here they come now. You can see what I have to contend with on this road. They're laden down with fuel tanks in each truck. It's always interesting to see what they're building. This looks like a pretty big project with all these trucks, all this fuel, crushed rock. Look at all these trucks. Wow. Never seen so many haul trucks. What is going on here? He's completely off the road. Talk about a work in progress. Get a front row seat right here. Utah's put more than $100 million into widening and reinforcing this corridor, adding pullouts, improving drainage, and it makes for a slow, dusty stretch of riding. But it's the kind of slow that tells me something's actually being built, not just patched. Well, I thought I might stop at the summit and take a little break, but that does not look like the kind of place you want to stop with that kind of activity going on, so we'll just carry on and head down the mountains on this side. And then, the way it always seems to happen out here, the canyon just opens up into a wide, green, honestly surprising agricultural valley, where I'd expect more empty desert. This is the Uinta Basin, and Roosevelt sits right in the middle of it. It was founded back in 1905 when Congress opened up the former Ute reservation lands to homesteaders, and named by the wife of the man who staked the original town site in honor of the sitting president at the time. It grew up fast as a trading hub for the whole basin, and it's stayed that way ever since. Equal parts farm town and oil town, which is a combination you find more often out here than you'd expect. Just past town, I pulled off onto a hillside for a minute, mostly just to look. Check it out, just a little side road off of Highway 191 coming here. Come up the dirt. Mwah. The highway running out ahead in a long straight line toward Vernal. Farmland and scattered wellheads spread out on either side. It's not a dramatic view exactly, but it's an honest one. A good, clear look at exactly where the road is taking you next, which after a morning in construction dust felt like a small reward in itself. Vernal wants you to know exactly what kind of town it is before you've even parked the bike. There's dinosaurs everywhere. Dinosaur brew house. There's one outside the 7-Eleven. They have really taken advantage of the dinosaur theme. Dinosaurs on nearly every corner. The whole town leaning hard and cheerfully into a single identity. Dinosaur land. Oh, this is the mother of all dinosaurs. The undisputed queen of it all is Dinah, a 40-foot candy-pink apatosaurus standing beside the highway, grinning down at traffic with a set of eyelashes no self-respecting dinosaur ever actually had. She dates back to 1958, dreamed up by a local motel owner's wife who sculpted the original design out of clay. She's been hit by a car, had her tail knocked clean off and reattached, and repainted more times than once in a custom shade the town now officially claims hers. But Vernal seems entirely at peace with the fact that its most beloved and historically protected landmark is a pink dinosaur with eyelashes. Leaving Vernal, the road climbs quickly out of the dinosaur statue sprawl and back into the open high desert, juniper and sagebrush, and red rock giving way to pale sandy hills. The kind of quiet transitional stretch that lets the day's business fall away before making camp. Steinaker State Park turned out to be a genuinely nice find to the end of the day, on a reservoir tucked into the high desert just 7 miles north of Vernal. It's named for John Steinaker, a member of one of the area's oldest pioneer ranching families. Cottonwoods and aspens crowding close to the shoreline, a welcome bit of shade and green against all that juniper and sand. And the park's earned a reputation as one of Utah's certified dark sky sites. Good news for a rider setting up camp with a few hours of daylight left to enjoy before the stars really come out. I got the tent up, mixed up a cocktail, and let the day settle into that particular quiet a good campsite gives you. Water close by, the desert cooling off fast once the sun dropped, and a genuinely good night's rest waiting for me before the ride up into Flaming Gorge the next morning. All right, the salmon burgers are coming along nicely. Check this out. I figured out something really cool. This is a little miniature tripod that I use for my video camera and a selfie stick, and I was able to attach the camping lantern to the top of it so I have nice downward facing illumination. Well, dinner is just about ready. Our last night here in Utah. Wow. You know, you embark on a long trip like the one I'm doing up to Alaska. Before you know it, you are in the thick of it. 4 days have gone by already. 4 full days of riding and filming and showing you guys what there is to see on Highway 191 through Arizona and then through Utah. We're almost at the end of the Utah section. I was actually planning to camp a little further north down the road up at the Flaming Gorge Reservoir, but ran out of daylight and found this place, which was pretty awesome. It turns out to be just a lovely campsite. I hope you guys are really, really enjoying this series. There is so much more to come on this adventure. I am really just getting started, but I'm going to finish cooking dinner here now and sign out for the evening. Get myself a really nice, good sleep. I'll see you in the morning. Morning brought the ride north into Flaming Gorge, and this stretch earns its name honestly. It's worth understanding what you're actually looking at here because Flaming Gorge is a genuinely significant piece of American water history. The name goes back to 1869, when a one-armed Civil War veteran named John Wesley Powell led the first documented expedition down the Green and Colorado rivers. And on the 3rd day out, he came around a bend to find himself staring at a canyon of red sandstone lit up so brilliantly by the sun that he swore it looked like it was on fire. He named it exactly that, and the name stuck. Nearly a century later, the Bureau of Reclamation built a dam right across the same gorge, part of a much larger system called the Colorado River Storage Project. 6 dams altogether, built to store and manage water across the entire upper Colorado River basin. Stopping at the spillway overlook, looking down at the dam itself, it's hard not to feel the scale of the thing. A wall of concrete deciding hour by hour how much of a river gets to keep moving. It's the kind of infrastructure most people never think about until they turn on a tap somewhere in Arizona or California and it works. The reservoir it created backs up the Green River for 91 miles, most of it stretching north into Wyoming, drowning 4 separate river gorges under water that's cold, clear, and startlingly blue against all that red rock. One more viewpoint further along gives the whole reservoir room to breathe. Canyon and water and sky, more or less exactly what Powell saw 150 years ago. minus the part where it was still a free-running river instead of a lake. From Flaming Gorge, the road keeps climbing, and this final stretch up to Wyoming border might be the best riding Utah 191 has to offer. Real elevation now, real air, and views opening up in every direction as the highway works its way up into genuinely high country. And that felt like the right note to close this chapter on. Utah 191 turned out to be everything I could have asked for and then some. Dinosaur bones, uranium millionaires and mining disasters, and a pink dinosaur with eyelashes. More genuine surprises per mile than I had any right to expect. Somewhere behind me now is Mexico, and ahead is the border and Wyoming, and after that Montana, the same road number carrying me all the way north before I finally leave 191 behind for good and keep pushing towards Canada. And beyond that, the whole reason I started this trip in the first place, Alaska. Still a long way off, but a little closer with every mile this road has given me.